The second time I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was my own name printed on a locker label. Not my phone, not the dorm ceiling, not the thin winter light slipping through the curtains like a warning. My name. Mara Lynn, Locker B17, written in black marker on a laminated strip of paper, sitting on the edge of my desk beside a roll of cheap double-sided tape. I stared at it for so long my eyes burned. In my last life, that label had been the first nail in my coffin, and no one had noticed the hammer. By midnight today, the teacher's folder would disappear from the staff corridor. By lunch tomorrow, the whole grade would whisper that I had stolen it. By Friday, the scholarship committee would suspend my application. By Monday, my parents would receive a formal call saying their daughter had violated academic integrity rules, and my father would sit so quietly at the kitchen table that even the clock seemed embarrassed to tick. And by the end of that year, my roommate, the girl who had cried on my shoulder and borrowed my shampoo and called me sister whenever she needed something, would stand on a stage wearing the medal that should have been mine. But this time, my fingers moved before my fear did. I snatched the locker label off the desk, pressed it flat between my palms, and laughed once. It came out ugly, almost like a cough. Across the room, under a blanket printed with pink strawberries, my roommate stirred. Clara Vale lifted her head, hair messy, cheeks soft with sleep, eyes innocent enough to fool a priest. "Mara," she mumbled, "why are you awake so early?" I looked at the label in my hands, then at her. In my last life, I had answered, "I'm just nervous about finals." This time, I smiled. I remembered something important. She blinked, and for one tiny second, before she arranged her face, I saw it. Alertness. Not confusion. Not concern. Alertness. The girl had been waiting for me to leave that label unattended. My whole body went cold, but my smile stayed. That was the first thing Rebirth taught me. Panic is loud, but revenge is quiet. Clara sat up slowly, clutching her blanket to her chest as if she were the fragile one. "What important thing?" she asked, too casually. Our dorm room looked exactly the way it had that morning before my life collapsed. 2 narrow beds, 2 study desks, 1 shared wardrobe that never closed properly, and a row of exam flashcards taped to the wall above my pillow. My side was neat because poverty had trained me to know the exact location of everything I owned. Clara's side was chaos, but not honest chaos. Her mess always spread in useful directions. Her notebook on my chair, her charger in my bag, her hair clip beside my mirror, her perfume near my scarf. In the last life, I had thought she was careless. Now I understood she was a cartographer, marking every inch of me until she could walk through my life blindfolded. I folded the locker label once, then slipped it into the inner pocket of my blazer. Her eyes followed the movement, and that alone was enough to confirm every nightmare I had carried back with me. "Nothing," I said. "Just making sure I don't lose my locker label." Clara's lips parted. A beat. Too long. Then she laughed, soft and airy. "You're so dramatic. It's just a label." Just a label. In my last life, that just a label had been found peeled off my assigned locker and stuck crookedly onto the staff prep locker where Ms. Arden kept the final recommendation folder for the academic showcase. When the folder vanished, everyone saw my name on that locker. They found my fingerprints on the handle because, of course, I had touched it earlier when Clara asked me to help her carry books through the corridor. They found a torn strip of my tape because Clara had borrowed it. They found the folder under my mattress because Clara had hidden it there while I was in the shower. The evidence had looked stupidly complete, the kind of complete that makes people stop asking questions. That was the genius of it. Not brilliance. Simplicity. A name label. A touched handle. A planted folder. A poor girl with too much to gain. The school did not need truth after that. It had a story. I went through the morning as if I were walking inside a glass box. Every sound was too sharp. The bathroom faucet squealed. The kettle clicked. Clara hummed while brushing her hair, the same cheerful tune she used last life, before she ruined me. It was a childish melody from an old cartoon, and somehow that made it worse. Monsters should not hum songs about sunshine. She kept glancing at my blazer pocket, pretending not to. I kept pretending not to notice. The script from my first life tried to drag me along by the ankles. At 7:10, Clara would ask to borrow my tape. At 7:18, she would complain that her locker label had smudged. At 7:25, she would suggest we walk to the classroom together. At 7:31, she would accidentally drop her water bottle near the staff corridor and ask me to help pick up her books. At 7:34, my fingers would touch the staff prep locker. At 8:05, during assembly, she would slip away. The old timeline was a row of dominoes, and I could hear them waiting. So, I did something I had never done in my last life. I moved first. While Clara was in the bathroom, I opened my drawer and took out the spare label sheet the dorm supervisor had given us. I wrote a fake one with a slightly different locker number. Marilyn, locker B19. Then I pressed it onto an old cracked plastic folder and left the folder sticking out of my school bag like bait that did not look like bait. My real label stayed in my blazer. My real locker assignment stayed in my phone, saved from the school portal before Clara could see it. Then, because I had learned the hard way that silence only protects the person lying, I sent one short message to Ms. Arden. Good morning, Mississippi. I noticed my locker label was loose, so I'm keeping it with me until I can attach it myself. Just letting you know in case anyone asks. I did not accuse Clara. I did not mention the folder. I did not sound frightened. I sounded boring. Boring survives where dramatic dies. Clara returned from the bathroom with damp hair and a face already arranged into sweetness. Mara, can I borrow your tape? There it was. The first domino, holding out its hand. I looked up from tying my shoes. Mine finished.
She froze.
Finished. And I lifted the empty cardboard ring from my desk and tossed it lightly into the bin. It made a hollow sound. Clara stared at it as if I had thrown away her oxygen. In truth, the tape was in my pencil case. The empty roll was from last term. A tiny lie, but clean. She recovered quickly, walking to my desk and touching the cracked plastic folder peeking from my bag. What's this? Old notes. Your locker label is on it. Practice one, I said, standing. The real one had a printing issue. She smiled, but her fingers tightened on the folder edge. Printing issue? Wrong adhesive. I watched her calculate. Clara was pretty in the way adults trusted automatically. Round eyes, small mouth, the kind of soft voice that made teachers lean in. She had built an entire personality out of seeming harmless. In our first semester, she cried because she got a 92 instead of 95 on a quiz, and I stayed up until 2 a.m. helping her review. Later I discovered she had copied my answer structure, submitted it first, and then told the teacher I had imitated her. I forgave her because she hugged me and said she was scared. After Rebirth, memories come back with a strange cruelty. Not as summaries, but as scenes. I remembered her tears soaking my shoulder. I remembered her smiling behind the principal's office door. I remember her saying, Mara is under a lot of pressure. Maybe she made one bad choice. One bad choice. She had said it with pity. That pity had murdered me socially more efficiently than hatred ever could. We left the dorm together because Clara insisted, and I allowed it because sometimes the best way to catch a hand is to let it reach. The school campus was still blue with morning cold. Students crossed the courtyard in clumps, scarves tucked under chins, breath turning white. The announcement speakers crackled above us, playing the principal's reminder about final security and academic showcase interviews. I almost laughed again. Final security. In my last life, those words had become a joke people whispered when I walked by. Hide your folders, Mara's coming. Check your lockers. Scholarship thief. I had been 17, and I learned then that a rumor does not need to be creative. It only needs to be repeated by people who enjoy not being the target. Clara walked beside me, swinging her bag lightly. You seem quiet today.
Doi.
You're usually nervous before big days. Maybe I'm done being nervous. She turned her head. What does that mean? I looked across the courtyard at the staff building, where the corridor windows reflected the pale sky. Behind one of those windows was the row of staff prep lockers. Ms. Arden's was number S4. In my last life, my label had been stuck over the small metal plate, so it looked like a student storage locker temporarily assigned for showcase materials. A ridiculous trick, but it worked because schools are full of temporary signs. It means, I said, some days repeat until you answer them correctly. Clara laughed too late. You and your weird lines. She nudged my shoulder, affectionate to anyone watching. Her sleeve brushed my blazer pocket where the real label rested, and my skin crawled. Then she looked at the cracked folder in my bag again. She thought she had found the replacement route.
Good.
Let her. The first interruption came before homeroom. Not from Clara, not from me, but from Ms. Arden herself. She stood outside classroom 3B holding a stack of attendance sheets, her silver-rimmed glasses low on her nose.
Mara, she called.
I felt Clara stiffen beside me. A word. In my last life, Ms. Arden had not spoken to me that morning. She had trusted me until the evidence told her not to. She was not cruel during the investigation, which somehow hurt more. Cruel people are easy to hate. Fair people who become disappointed are harder to survive. I walked over, heart punching my ribs. Ms. Arden looked at me carefully. Thank you for your message. Keep your label with you for now. The maintenance office had a report last week about labels being moved between lockers. I would rather avoid confusion. My pulse changed rhythm. Last week, labels being moved? In the old life, I had never known. Maybe there had already been signs. Maybe Clara had practiced. Of course, miss, I said. Ms. Arden's gaze flicked past my shoulder to Clara for half a second. Not enough for Clara to accuse. Enough for me to notice. Also, Ms. Arden added, students are not permitted in the staff corridor today unless accompanied. Please remind your classmates. That was not a reminder. That was a net being lowered. I nodded. Clara came up beside me the moment Ms. Arden walked away. What was that about? She asked. My label. Why did you message her? Her tone was still sweet, but the sugar had grit in it. I tilted my head. Because it's my name. I don't like people touching things with my name on them. Her face changed for half a second, and in that half second I saw the version of Clara no one believed in. Irritated, sharp, almost insulted that I had moved without permission. Homeroom began with the usual noise, but to me, every detail was loaded. The boys in the back argued over calculator batteries. A girl near the window whispered flashcards to herself like prayers. Someone spilled iced coffee, and the smell of sugar and panic spread across the room. Clara sat one row behind me, where she could see my bag. I placed the cracked folder under my chair with a fake label visible. Then I opened my notebook and wrote nothing. I was waiting. At 8:05, the assembly bell rang. Everyone stood. Clara did not. She bent down slowly, pretending to tie her shoelace. Her fingers brushed the cracked folder. I looked forward and let her take it. My nails dug into my palm under the desk. That was the strangest part of revenge. It asked me to let the thief steal, at least for a few steps. The old Mara would have spun around, snatched it back, demanded, "What are you doing?" The old Mara thought exposure meant catching the first movement. The new Mara understood that a hand touching bait is suspicion, a hand carrying stolen bait into a forbidden corridor is proof. Clara slipped the folder into her tote bag and stood with a little breath of relief. She thought she had won back control. The class moved toward the hall. I walked in the middle of the line, not beside her. Our reflections passed along the trophy cabinet. Students, blazers, exam badges, my face calm enough to look unfamiliar. At the assembly entrance, Clara touched my elbow. I forgot my student ID in the dorm. Cover for me. There was the old excuse slightly adjusted. I looked at her hand on my sleeve until she removed it. No, her smile faltered. What?
No,
Asked the teacher. Mara, don't be difficult. It's 1 minute. I turned away. Then it won't be hard to explain. She did not go back to the dorm.
of course she didn't.
She waited until the second-year students crowded near the auditorium doors, then slipped sideways into the stairwell that led to the staff building. I saw the movement through the glass panel. More importantly, so did the hallway camera above the trophy cabinet. I walked into assembly and sat in my assigned seat. My hands were shaking so hard I tucked them under my thighs. On stage, the principal talked about academic honesty, perseverance, integrity, All the polished words schools hang up like curtains to hide how easily reputations can be burned. I heard none of it. I counted minutes.
1, 2, 3.
In my last life, I had been sitting here too, innocent and unaware, while Clara peeled my name from one door and placed it on another. I used to torture myself with that image. Her careful fingers, her quick glance over her shoulder, the way she must have smiled when the label stuck. Now the image changed. She would reach for the fake label. She would follow the fake locker number. B19 did not exist in the student locker area. B19 was an old maintenance marking on the staff corridor map beside Ms. Arden's temporary storage cabinet. I had not invented that. The school had made the confusion possible years before. But I had made one change. I had told Ms. Arden my real label was with me. I had kept my name out of the corridor. Clara was no longer moving my identity like a chess piece. She was moving herself. At minute 9, the auditorium doors opened. Ms. Arden entered quietly and walked down the side aisle.
She did not look at me.
She leaned toward the vice principal, whispered something, and both of them left. My stomach dropped. This was it. Not the dramatic version I had dreamed of in my first life, where someone burst in and shouted the truth. Real consequences do not arrive with thunder. Sometimes they arrive with a teacher whispering beside a beige wall. The second interruption came from a girl named Tessa, who had hated me in the last life for reasons I never understood until much later. She slid into the empty seat beside me during the school song and whispered, "Did Clara ask you to cover for her?" I looked at her. Tessa had sharp eyeliner, sharper grades, and the exhausting confidence of someone whose parents donated to 3 school funds. In my last life, she had been one of the first to call me a thief. Why? I whispered back. Because she asked me yesterday if I knew whether staff corridor cameras worked during assembly. My breath stopped. Tessa's eyes narrowed. I thought she was being weird. Then she told everyone you were stressed about scholarship rankings. Then today she disappears. The song ended. Everyone clapped automatically. Tessa kept looking at me, not warmly, but not cruelly either. What did she do? I could have told her everything. I could have spilled both lives into her lap. The label, the folder, the frame-up, the year of humiliation, the way Clara weaponized sympathy like perfume. But too much truth too early sounds like madness. So I said, I don't know yet.
Tessa studied me.
That's a very lawyer answer. It's the only safe one. She leaned back, and for the first time since Rebirth, someone beside me smiled without wanting something from me. Good, she said. I like safe answers when someone else is being stupid. That one sentence shifted something. In my last life, I had believed the whole world turned on me because everyone hated me. Now I wondered how many people had simply never been given a clean enough truth to stand on. When assembly ended, we were told to remain seated. That had not happened before. A murmur spread through the auditorium like spilled ink. The principal returned to the microphone with his mouth set flat. Students, please wait while staff confirm classroom arrangements. Confirm classroom arrangements. Adults are artists when it comes to saying nothing loudly. 3 rows ahead, Clara's empty seat looked like a missing tooth. My classmates noticed. One boy whispered, "Where's Vale?" Another said, "Bathroom?" Tessa crossed her arms. "Long bathroom." I kept my eyes forward. The doors opened again. This time Clara entered between Ms. Arden and Mr. Holt, the vice principal. She was not crying yet, which meant she still believed she could talk her way out. Her tote bag hung from one shoulder. The cracked folder with my fake label was not visible. Behind them, the school secretary carried a sealed blue folder in both hands, as if it were evidence in a trial. My heart kicked so hard I almost made a sound.
Blue.
Ms. Arden's teacher folder. In my last life, it had ended under my mattress, flattened beneath my blanket like a dead bird. Now it was where everyone could see it. Clara scanned the auditorium. Her eyes found me. For 1 second, she looked betrayed, not guilty.
Betrayed.
As if I had broken an agreement by refusing to be framed. Then her face crumpled into confusion so perfect that even I, who had died under its weight, almost admired the craft. "I don't know how it got in my bag," she said loudly before anyone asked. That was her mistake. Innocent people ask what happened. Guilty people answer the question they fear. The vice principal asked Clara to wait in the side office beside the auditorium. She protested just enough to look wrong. "But finals start today. I can't miss the opening briefing."
I didn't do anything.
Mara can explain. There it was. My name, released like a knife. Heads turned. Heat climbed my neck, but I stayed seated. Ms. Arden's expression changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. "Mara?" Clara's eyes filled. She gave me her folder. The one with her locker label on it. I thought she wanted me to bring it to the classroom. I didn't know there was a teacher's folder inside. Several students whispered. The old story was trying to resurrect itself. My fake label had become her rope and mine at once. For a moment, fear opened its mouth inside me. What if the adults believed her again? What if Rebirth did not change people, only gave them new ways to hurt you? Then Ms. Arden turned to me. "Mara, do you have your real locker label?" I stood. My legs felt hollow, but my voice came out clear. "Yes, Mississippi." I reached into my blazer pocket and took out the laminated strip. My actual name. My actual locker. B17. Clean, untorn, unpeeled. The room quieted in a way I had never heard before. Not silence. Attention. I walked down the aisle and handed it to Ms. Arden. She examined it, then looked at Clara. "This is the label Mara reported to me this morning." Clara's tears paused. She made another one. "Yes," I said. Every head snapped toward me. I did. Because someone kept asking about my locker label. A sound moved through the students, not quite a gasp, not quite laughter. Clara stared at me, as if I had slapped her. "What are you implying?"
Nothing, I said. I'm uncertain.
Ms. Arden held up the fake folder. This folder was found inside Clara's tote bag. The label on it says B19. She looked toward the vice principal. "There is no student locker B19 in the current assignment list," Mr. Holt added, "but there is a staff storage cabinet marked B19 on the old maintenance map." Clara's face lost color. I saw the exact moment she realized the fake label had not saved her. It had exposed the path of her intention. She had not accidentally taken my folder. She had followed the number to a restricted area. She tried to pivot. I was confused. Mara leaves things everywhere. I thought. Tessa stood up. She took it from under Mara's chair during assembly lineup. The auditorium shifted again. Clara whipped toward her. "What?" Tessa shrugged. "You asked me about cameras yesterday. I thought you were planning something weird, so I watched." That was not entirely true. Tessa had watched because she disliked uncertainty, not because she cared about me. But truth does not need pure motives to be useful. Clara's tears finally fell. "You're all twisting this." Mara set me up. I looked at her. Really looked. In my last life, I had begged people to believe I was innocent, and Clara had stood beside me with trembling lips, letting my desperation make me look guiltier. Now she was the one shaking. The sight did not make me happy. It made me steady. There is a difference. Happiness is a burst. Steadiness is a locked door. Mr. Holt asked me to come to the office too, only to provide clarification. That phrase would have terrified me before. Now I followed without arguing. Clara walked ahead, shoulders hunched, still performing injury for anyone behind us. The corridor to the administrative office smelled like floor polish and raincoats. Students pressed near classroom doors, trying to see. I kept my face neutral because I knew how quickly expression becomes evidence when people want to judge you. In the office, Ms. Arden placed the blue folder on the table, still sealed with a red paper band. That red band mattered. In my last life, the folder found under my mattress had been opened. The scholarship interview notes had been photographed. My application essay had been leaked in a group chat with laughing emojis under the line about my mother working night shifts. Clara had not just framed me, she had fed my vulnerability to people for entertainment. This time, the red band was unbroken. Ms. Arden tapped it once. This folder contains teacher recommendation forms, interview rubrics, and confidential academic records. It was removed from my locked staff storage cabinet. Clara cried harder. I didn't remove it. I found it. Mr. Holt's voice was calm. Where? In Mara's folder. The cracked folder? Yes. Which you took from her without asking? She always shares notes with me. I almost smiled. Sharing notes. Borrowing tape. Covering excuses. Clara could turn theft into community with 3 soft words. Ms. Arden looked at me. Mara, did you give Clara permission to take that folder? No. Did you ask her to enter the staff corridor? No. Did you know Ms. Arden's folder was inside the cracked folder? No, Clara snapped. Leah? The room stopped. There it was again. The real Clara punching through the paper mask. Mr. Holt wrote something down. Then came the part one had not expected. Ms. Arden opened her desk drawer and took out a small plastic evidence bag. Inside were 2 peeled locker labels, both with my name printed on them. My heartbeat stumbled. These were found last week, she said. One on an unused storage drawer, one in the waste bin near the staff corridor. At the time, I assumed it was a prank. Clara stared at the bag like it had spoken. I stared too, because my rebirth had not started at the beginning of the crime. It had started after Clara had already been rehearsing. Mara, Ms. Arden said gently, did you print those? I shook my head. No, Mississippi. Clara whispered. Anyone could have. Tessa had been brought in by then and stood near the door, arms folded. Not anyone asked if the cameras worked, she said. Clara turned on her. Why are you even here? Because I like finals without felonies. Mr. Holt cleared his throat, but I saw his mouth twitch. The absurdity cut through the tension so sharply that I almost laughed. A pattern interruption. My life, which had once been a straight fall into disgrace, had become something else. A room where Clara's script kept meeting people who refused to say their lines. Mr. Holt turned his laptop around. We reviewed the hallway footage from assembly. He did not play it for us immediately, maybe because adults still pretend humiliation can be managed with privacy. But the thumbnail on the screen showed enough. Clara at the staff corridor entrance, my fake folder under her arm, her head turned toward the camera. In my last life, the footage had been inconclusive because the camera near the locker row was supposedly down. Now, because Ms. Arden had already reported label tampering, maintenance had checked it yesterday. The camera worked. The past had left me one mercy. It taught me where to nudge before the trap closed. Clara stopped crying. That was how I knew she was truly afraid. Tears were for audiences. Silence was for calculation. She looked from the laptop to Ms. Arden, then to me. Mara hates me, she said softly. She's been jealous all term. I nearly laughed at the laziness of it. When cornered, Clara always reached for the easiest story. Girls compete, girls envy, girls lie because another girl is prettier, richer, loved more. People believe female jealousy quickly because it asks them to think very little. Jealous of what? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it cut. Your borrowed notes? Your borrowed charger? Your borrowed excuses? Her eyes flashed. You act like you're better than everyone because you study all night. No, I said. I studied all night because no one was going to rescue me if I failed. The room went still. I had not meant to say it like that, but once the sentence existed, I did not take it back. Ms. Arden's face softened. Clara saw that and hated me for it. You're performing, she spat. You set this up. You knew I'd take the folder. There it was, almost a confession wrapped in accusation. Mr. Holt looked up. How would Mara know you would take it, Clara? She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time since I had known her, Clara had no pretty answer ready. The silence after that was enormous. It filled the office, the corridor, maybe both lifetimes. I stood inside it and felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not peace. Something more practical. The knot of needing everyone to understand me began to untie. I did not need to make the whole world believe I was good. I only needed enough truth in the right places. They separated us after that. Clara stayed with Mr. Holt. I was taken to the counseling office, where Ms. Arden asked if I was okay. I almost said yes because good girls say yes when adults look tired. Then I remembered the last life, the principal's office, the way I had swallowed every sob because I thought dignity meant not making people uncomfortable. "No," I said. The words surprised both of us. Ms. Arden sat down across from me. Outside the window, students moved toward first period in restless waves. Finals had not even begun, yet the day already felt like it had lived 3 lives. "I'm not okay," I continued. "Someone has been touching my belongings. Someone tried to use my name. And if I hadn't messaged you this morning, I think this would have landed on me." Ms. Arden folded her hands. "I think you may be right." Hearing an adult say, that almost broke me. In my last life, I had heard, "We need to consider all possibilities. You understand how this looks. Intent matters less than evidence, and a suspension from scholarship review is not a final judgment." Not once had I heard, "You may be right." I looked down at my skirt and forced my tears back, not because crying was weakness, but because Clara had taught everyone to distrust tears, and I hated that she had stolen even that. "I want everything documented," I said. "The labels, the footage, the folder, her taking my folder without permission, all of it. I want a written record." Ms. Arden nodded immediately. "You'll have one. And I don't want to share a room with her tonight." "You won't." Another knot loosened. Such a simple promise. "You won't." In my last life, after the accusation, they made me sleep in the same dorm while the investigation continued, and Clara whispered from her bed, "Just admit it. They'll go easier on you." I had spent that night staring at the ceiling, wondering how evil could sound so sleepy. The school tried to keep the situation quiet, which was impossible because teenagers can smell scandal through concrete. By second period, half the grade knew Clara had been pulled from assembly. By lunch, they knew a teacher's folder was involved. By afternoon, the version floating around had grown wings. Clara had broken into the principal's safe. Clara had sold exam papers. Clara had been caught wearing night vision goggles in the staff lounge. The absurd rumors almost made me angry until I remembered how mine had spread last life. Mara stole scholarship records. Mara hacked teacher email. Mara bribed a janitor. Mara hid answer keys in her socks. Rumors do not care who deserves them. They are stray dogs. They bite whoever people point at. So when Tessa sat across from me at lunch and said, "For what it's worth, I told people what I saw," I did not thank her too quickly. "Why?" I asked. She stabbed a piece of broccoli with her fork. "Because Clara once submitted my debate outline under her name and cried when I confronted her. I didn't have proof. You apparently collect proof now." I looked at her, startled. "She did that to you too?" "To half the people she calls friends, probably. She just chooses people who are too embarrassed to admit they got played." Tessa leaned closer. "You should know something. Last week she asked the printer assistant how to duplicate laminated labels." The cafeteria noise faded around me. Clara's practice labels. The evidence bag. The repeated rehearsals. "Why didn't you report it?" I asked. Tessa's mouth twisted. "Because she said she was making name tags for peer tutoring. And because I didn't want to sound paranoid." There it was, the trap Clara used on everyone. She made the truth sound petty before anyone could speak it. If you complained, you were jealous. If you protected your notes, you were selfish. If you noticed patterns, you were paranoid. She didn't just steal things. She stole the language people needed to stop her. After lunch, Ms. Arden called me back. My stomach tightened until she said, "You are not in trouble." Those 5 words should be printed on emergency blankets and handed to girls who have spent their lives being blamed for other people's chaos. In the office sat the principal, Mr. Holt, the dorm supervisor, Mrs. Kwan, and a woman from administration I recognized from scholarship interviews. The blue folder lay on the table, red seal intact. Beside it were printed screenshots from the hallway footage. Clara was not there. Somehow her absence made her larger. The principal cleared his throat. "Mara, we want to ask you about any prior incidents involving Clara Vale and your belongings." I almost said there were none because the old instinct rose up. Don't make trouble. Don't exaggerate. Don't look vindictive. Then I saw the screenshots. Clara entering the restricted corridor. Clara carrying my fake folder. Clara opening Ms. Arden's cabinet. Truth deserved witnesses, and witnesses deserved truth. So,
I began.
I told them about the borrowed notes that appeared in Clara's assignments. The missing USB drive that returned with my file history opened. The time my scholarship essay draft vanished, and Clara suddenly used the same metaphor about a ladder built from library lights. The time she asked me to swap lockers because hers smelled weird, then got angry when I refused. I did not say, in my last life. I said this term. I gave dates when I could. I gave names when there were witnesses. Mrs. Kwan's face grew tighter with each sentence. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. It could have sounded accusing, but it didn't. It sounded sad. I answered honestly, because she cried whenever I tried. And then I felt like the bad person. The scholarship administrator wrote that down. For some reason, that was the sentence she chose to preserve. The third interruption came at 3:17 p.m. when Clara's mother arrived. I knew the time because I was standing by the office printer signing my statement, and the wall clock clicked loudly enough to mark the moment. Mrs. Vale swept into the administrative hallway wearing a cream coat and a face like polished marble. In my last life, she had sat across from my parents and said, "We simply want fairness for all students," while her daughter's stolen medal gleamed on the brochure beside her. She was the kind of woman who said fairness the way others said obedience. Clara followed behind her, eyes red, mouth small, now fully dressed in victimhood. The moment Clara saw me, she flinched as if I had hurt her. Mrs. Vale noticed and turned her gaze on me. "You must be Mara." Not a question. A verdict. I held my signed statement against my chest. Yes. My daughter says there has been a misunderstanding. In the old life, that tone would have shrunk me. It carried money, confidence, adult authority, and the bored impatience of someone used to moving obstacles with phone calls. This time, I thought of my father sitting silent at our kitchen table, my mother checking her bank app before buying fruit, and the scholarship letter that had been taken from me. I stood straighter. Then I hope the footage clears it up. Mrs. Vale's eyes sharpened. Clara touched her sleeve.
Mom, don't.
Too late. The principal stepped out of his office. "Mrs. Vale, we can discuss this privately." She lifted her chin. "I would prefer to know why my daughter is being treated like a criminal based on another student's setup." The hallway went quiet. Teachers love privacy until a parent chooses performance. The principal's polite mask thinned. "Your daughter was recorded entering a restricted staff corridor and removing a confidential folder from a locked storage cabinet." Mrs. Vale blinked once. Clara whispered, "It wasn't locked." Mr. Holt, behind the principal, said, "That is not the defense you think it is." Something shifted then. Not just in the hallway, but in Clara's face. She realized her mother could not save her by simply disbelieving harder. Money can bend many things, but camera footage is stubborn. Mrs. Vale recovered fast. "Why was this student's label involved?" she asked, pointing at me without looking. "Because your daughter had a folder bearing a fake version of Mara's label," Ms. Arden said. Mara had already reported and retained her real label before the incident. Mrs. Vale's gaze moved to Clara. For the first time, suspicion entered it. Clara shook her head violently. "Mara made me take it." I almost admired the commitment. With every adult present, with evidence on the table, with her own words tangling around her ankles, she still reached for me.
How?
I asked. The word was soft, but it landed. Clara stared. "What? How did I make you take it? Did I hand it to you? Did I ask you? Did I walk with you? Did I open the cabinet? Did I put the teacher's folder in your bag?" She looked at her mother. "She tricked me into stealing?" I asked. "Into exposing yourself?" Ms. Arden said, "Mara." Not sharply. A warning. I stepped back, but I did not apologize. The old Mara apologized for taking up space. The new Mara conserved apologies for actual mistakes. Clara's eyes filled again, but the tears no longer had direction. They slid down her face without persuading anyone. Mrs. Vale's mouth tightened. "Clara, tell me exactly what happened." Clara opened her mouth. No sound came out. That was when I understood the difference between a liar and a strategist. A liar needs one false sentence. A strategist needs the whole room to remain predictable. I had made the room unpredictable. By evening, I was moved to a spare dorm room above the library, a small space usually reserved for exchange students. Mrs. Kwon helped carry my suitcase herself. The room smelled faintly of dust and old paper. One bed, one desk, one wardrobe that closed properly. A window facing the back courtyard, where the ginkgo trees were dropping yellow leaves onto the path. I stood there with my bag at my feet and felt the impossible luxury of being alone. In my last life, loneliness had been punishment. This time, solitude felt like clean water. Mrs. Kwon hovered near the door. Mara, I'm sorry I missed signs. I looked at her. She was not a villain. That made the apology complicated. Villains are useful because you can put all your pain in one container. Ordinary adults who fail, you create a messier grief. I should have reported sooner, I said. She shook her head. You were a student. The burden was not yours alone. That sentence stayed with me long after she left. The burden was not yours alone. I unpacked slowly. My real locker label went into the top drawer beside my student ID. I touched it once before closing the drawer. Such a small thing, a laminated strip with my name on it. Last life, I had not understood why the label mattered so much until it was too late. Names are handles. People use them to carry stories. Clara had tried to carry mine into disgrace. This time, I took my handle back. I barely slept. Rebirth does not make you fearless. It just makes fear familiar. Every time the hallway creaked, I imagined Clara outside my door. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected a group chat screenshot, a new accusation, a school-wide rumor mutating beyond control. Instead, at 10:42 p.m., I received a message from Tessa. People are saying Clara's parents are trying to argue stress. Don't respond to anyone. Screenshots forever. I stared at it, then typed, "Why are you helping me?" The reply came after 3 dots appeared and disappeared twice. Because last year when my outline got stolen, I wish someone had helped me before I became too embarrassed to fight. A minute later, she added, "Also because Clara once told me my eyeliner made me look like a raccoon with ambition." I laughed into my pillow, sudden and quiet. It hurt my chest. The day had been so heavy that laughter felt illegal. I typed back, "That's oddly specific." Tessa replied, "She's oddly evil." Then, after another pause, "Sleep. Tomorrow will be worse before it's better." She was right. The next day always belongs to consequences, and consequences are messier than exposure. Exposure is a flash. Consequences have paperwork. The disciplinary hearing was scheduled for the following afternoon. In the morning, finals were delayed for our class, and the school pretended this was due to administrative scheduling. Everyone knew. Clara did not attend breakfast. Her closest friends sat in a tight group, whispering with the stiff expressions of people trying to calculate whether loyalty was still profitable. I carried my tray to an empty table, but Tessa kicked the chair opposite her.
Seat.
It was not an invitation. It was a command wearing friendship's jacket.
Iset.
2 other girls joined us, Priya from chemistry and Noelle from debate. Priya slid a carton of milk toward me without comment. Noelle said, "Clara asked me last month what happens if scholarship applicants are disqualified after ranking interviews." I stopped with my spoon halfway to my mouth. "What did you say?" "I said the next eligible candidate moves up." Noelle looked sick. I thought she was anxious because she ranked second.
Second.
The word clicked into place. In my last life, Clara had become first after my suspension. She had not stolen the folder for answers. She had stolen it to remove me. The folder contained recommendation forms and interview rubrics, yes, but more importantly, it contained the final teacher endorsement rankings. Clara had known enough to know she was behind. The theft had never been about academic desperation. It was about subtraction. If she could not outrun me, she would erase me from the track. I set my spoon down. My appetite vanished. Tessa's jaw tightened. "Please tell me you're going to destroy her." I looked toward the window, where the staff building stood gray under the morning sky. "No," I said. "I'm going to let the record do it." Tessa groaned. "That is annoyingly mature." "No," I said again, quieter. "It's colder than anger." During the hearing, Clara wore a white cardigan. I noticed because in my last life, she wore the same one when she hugged me outside the principal's office and whispered, "I'm sorry this is happening to you. White cardigans should come with warnings." Her mother sat on one side, her father on the other, looking less angry than confused, as if his daughter had been replaced overnight by a stranger wearing her skin. My parents joined by video call because they could not leave work on such short notice. My mother's face filled the small screen, tired and frightened. My father sat beside her, jaw clenched. Seeing them made my throat close. In my last life, I had watched shame enter their house like smoke. This time, I wanted them to breathe. The principal opened with formal language. Allegation. Confidential material. Unauthorized access. Student property. Potential framing. Clara stared at the table. When asked to explain, she chose the softest version of herself. I thought Mara wanted me to carry the folder because she was overwhelmed. I went to find her locker, but I got confused and saw the cabinet. The teacher's folder was already there. I panicked and put it in my bag because I didn't know what to do. It was almost beautiful structurally. She placed herself near every crime, but inside none. Confused, panicked, overwhelmed, accidental. A fog machine of innocence. Then Mr. Holt played the footage. Clara walking directly to the staff corridor. Clara looking left and right. Clara taking a small paper from the cracked folder and comparing it to the cabinet label. Clara opening the cabinet. Clara removing the blue folder. Clara placing it inside the cracked folder, then inside her tote.
No panique. No confusión.
Precision. My mother covered her mouth on the video call. My father leaned forward until only his eyes were visible. Clara's mother stopped blinking. The principal asked Clara why she had told multiple people that I was stressed about scholarship rankings before the incident.
Clara said she was worried about me.
Ms. Arden asked why she had researched duplicated locker labels. Clara said she was helping with peer tutoring tags. Mr. Holt asked why 2 peeled labels with my name had been found near staff storage last week. Clara said anyone could print a name. Then Tessa, Priya, and Noelle gave statements. Not dramatic ones. That made them stronger. Tessa said Clara asked about cameras. Priya said Clara borrowed my notes often and submitted unusually similar work. Noelle said Clara asked about scholarship disqualification. Mrs. Kwan said Clara had repeatedly requested a room change into my room before term started, even though assignments were random. That detail startled me. I had not known. Clara had chosen me earlier than I realized. She had not simply become my roommate and found an opportunity. She had aimed herself at me. When I was asked to speak, I did not cry. I wanted to, but I chose clarity. I worked for that scholarship for 2 years. I shared notes with Clara because I thought we were friends. Yesterday morning, I kept my real locker label because I was uncomfortable with how much attention she paid to it. I made a fake folder because I wanted to see if my belongings were being touched, but I did not know she would enter the staff corridor or take Ms. Arden's folder. I did not ask her to carry anything. I did not give permission. I want my academic record protected. The principal nodded. My mother cried silently on the screen. My father said one sentence. My daughter tells the truth. It was not evidence. It did not need to be. It was a bridge back to myself. Clara's mask cracked near the end, not because of the footage, not because of the witness statements, but because Ms. Arden revealed the ranking sheet. The blue folder had remained sealed, so its contents were not compromised. The scholarship administrator confirmed that I was ranked first for the academic showcase recommendation, Clara second. The attempted removal of the folder would have disproportionately benefited Clara Vale if Mara Lynn had been implicated, she said. Bureaucratic language, clean as a scalpel. Clara lifted her head. That's not fair. Everyone looked at her. 3 words. Not, that's not true. Not, I didn't know. That's not fair. Her mother whispered, Clara. But the crack widened. She always gets praised, Clara said, pointing at me now, face flushed. Everyone acts like Mara is some hardworking saint because she looks tired and quiet. I work hard too. I deserve. She stopped, but the word had already entered the room.
Deserve.
The most dangerous word in a thief's mouth. Ms. Arden's expression went cold. You may work hard, Clara. That does not give you permission to harm another student. Clara laughed, sharp and wet. She set a trap. I answered before anyone else could.
No.
I stopped, leaving the door open. Silence. Then, Mr. Holt wrote something down again. I wondered what it looked like in the minutes. Student Mara Lynn states, I stopped, leaving the door open. It sounded almost too simple for what it meant. I stopped making my kindness available for theft. I stopped mistaking access for friendship. I stopped handing my name to someone who practiced forging it. The decision did not come immediately. School's love process after damage becomes visible. Clara was placed on temporary suspension pending final disciplinary review. She was removed from the scholarship pool until the investigation concluded. She had to move out of our dorm that same evening under supervision. My record was formally cleared, though the phrase irritated me. Cleared from what? From a crime I had not committed in this life? From a suspicion planted before it bloomed? Still, paperwork matters. Paperwork had ruined me once. Now paperwork held the line. After the hearing, Clara found me in the corridor outside the office while our parents were still speaking with administrators. For the first time all day, she looked like a person without an audience.
No cardigan softness, no trembling victim outro, no polished cheers.
Just Clara, angry, humiliated, young, and cruel. You think you won, she said. I was tired enough to tell the truth.
No.
I think I survived earlier this time. Her eyes narrowed. What does that even mean? I looked at her and almost told her. I almost said, in another life you stole more than a folder. You stole my name, my scholarship, my parents' trust, and a year of my future. You stood on stage wearing my medal while I watched from the back row because I was too ashamed to leave the house but too angry to stay away. You smiled when they called you resilient. You called yourself resilient after stepping on my throat. But some truths are too large for the person who caused them. Clara would not understand rebirth as mercy. She would understand it only as unfair advantage. So I said, it means I'm done explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. She scoffed. You sound like a motivational poster. And you sound like someone who got caught. She moved before I expected it, grabbing my sleeve hard enough to wrinkle the blazer. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. My body remembered the old fear instantly. The dorm room, the whispers, the office, the folder under my mattress. For 1 second, I was both versions of myself, the girl who had been ruined and the girl standing in the corridor with evidence on her side. Then I looked down at her hand. Let go. Mara, please. The word please came out like a coin inserted into a machine. She expected something to drop. You know what will happen to me if this stays on my record? I did. That was why my voice was steady. Yes. My mother will kill me. No, she won't. My scholarship applications. You should have thought of that before touching mine. Her grip tightened. You're cruel. That almost did it. Not because it hurt, but because it was so perfectly Clara. She could steal, frame, lie, and still call the boundary cruel. I leaned closer.
No.
Cruel would be hiding your folder under your mattress and watching the whole school call you a thief. I'm only letting your own hands be seen. She dropped my sleeve as if burned. Behind her, Ms. Arden had stepped out of the office. I did not know how much she heard, but her face told me enough. Clara turned and saw her too. For one brief moment, her expression became small, truly small, like a child who had built a fire and only just realized houses burn. Then she walked away. The move-out happened at 6 p.m. I watched from the library stairwell, not because I wanted to gloat, but because I needed my body to see the difference. Last life, I had packed my own things under Clara's pitying gaze while Mrs. Kwan told me the temporary room was for everyone's comfort. Clara had sat on her bed hugging a plush rabbit and whispering, I hope you don't hate me. This time, Clara packed while Mrs. Kwan stood by the door with a clipboard. Her mother folded clothes too sharply. Her father carried boxes, without speaking. Students slowed in the hallway, pretending not to look. Clara's side of the room emerged from under the mess. Borrowed pens, my missing blue highlighter, a stack of photocopied notes with my handwriting visible in the margins, my old hair clip, Tessa's debate cue cards, Priya's lab summary. Not enough for a criminal trial. Enough for a pattern. Mrs. Kwan placed the items in a clear bag and labeled them. Clara saw me at the stairwell then. Our eyes met over the cardboard box in her arms. I expected hatred. I got something worse. Disbelief. She still could not understand why the world had not rearranged itself to protect her. I thought of all the times I had confused her helplessness with innocence. Helpless people ask for help. Clara demanded sacrifice and called it help. There is a difference, and it cost me one life to learn it. That night, I returned to the spare room and opened my laptop. My scholarship essay was still there untouched. The final paragraph read, I used to think success meant leaving hardship behind, but now I understand it means carrying what shaped me without letting it define the limits of where I can go. In my last life, that sentence had been mocked in the group chat after Clara leaked it. Someone had written, carrying hardship? Girl carried Ms. Arden's folder too. I had deleted the essay afterward. I had rewritten it into something bland and bloodless because shame edited me better than any teacher. This time, I read the paragraph again and did not delete it. Instead, I added a sentence. Integrity is not proven only when others are watching. Sometimes it begins when you decide your own name is worth protecting before anyone else understands the danger. Too obvious? Maybe. Too personal? Definitely. But it was mine. I saved 3 copies. Laptop, cloud, USB. Then, I changed every password Clara had ever seen me type. A practical rebirth ritual. Not candles, not tears, not dramatic vows under moonlight. Password changes. Backup folders. Written records. Boundaries with timestamps. People imagine revenge as fire. Mine looked like administrative hygiene. The final academic showcase took place 1 week later. By then, the school had released a careful statement about a breach of staff storage protocol involving a student and no compromise to final examinations or scholarship materials. Clara's name was not included, but everyone knew. She transferred to online study pending review. Her friends became historians overnight, claiming they had always felt something was off. Tessa called them weather vanes with lip gloss. I did not join the gossip. That surprised people. Maybe they expected me to perform triumph, to laugh loudly in the cafeteria, to repeat every detail until Clara's humiliation became my entertainment. But I had lived on the other side of that machine. I knew how ugly it was even when pointed at someone who deserved consequences. So I spoke when asked by administrators, corrected lies when necessary, and otherwise kept walking. That restraint became its own rumor. Mara is scary now. Mara knows things. Mara planned the whole thing. Mara is calm because she has evidence on everyone. The last one made Tessa laugh, so hard she nearly choked on juice. Do you, she asked, have evidence on everyone? I looked at her. Not yet. She saluted me with her carton. Humor stitched something back into my days. Not innocence. I did not get that back. But something sturdier replaced it. Discernment. On showcase morning, I wore the same navy blazer from the day of the folder theft, now pressed clean. My real locker label was still in my drawer, though lockers had been reassigned with printed plates after the incident. Ms. Arden offered to dispose of it for me. I said no. I want to keep it. She understood without asking. The auditorium was decorated with white banners and gold ribbon. Parents filled the back rows. Teachers moved around with clipboards. The scholarship administrator called finalists one by one for short presentations. Clara's seat in the second row was empty. Not erased exactly. Absence has weight when everyone remembers who should have been there. My parents sat near the aisle, my mother in her work blouse, my father with his hands folded so tightly his knuckles paled. When my name was called, I walked on stage. The lights were bright enough to hide the audience, which helped. I spoke about my research project on low-cost study resource access for rural students. I did not mention Clara. I did not mention theft. I did not turn my pain into a public performance because not every wound deserves ticket sales. But near the end, I said, systems matter because individual effort can be damaged when records, access, and trust are not protected. Fairness is not a feeling. It is a structure. Ms. Arden looked down at her clipboard, and I saw her smile. After presentations, the awards were announced. In my last life, I had stood at the back of the auditorium because I was no longer allowed to sit with finalists. I watched Clara step up when they called her name. She wore pearl earrings I had helped her choose. She cried prettily. Everyone applauded the girl who had survived stress. This time, when the scholarship administrator said, "The academic integrity and leadership scholarship goes to Mara Lin," the sound that followed did not feel real at first. Applause is strange after disgrace, even disgrace prevented. My body still expected whispers. I walked to the stage with my hands cold and my face calm. The certificate was heavier than I expected. The metal ribbon scratched the back of my neck. From the front row, Tessa mouthed, "Don't cry weird." That almost made me cry weird. My mother was already crying normally. My father looked at me as if the whole room had finally caught up to something he had always known. I held the certificate and thought of the locker label in my drawer. A name can be moved. A name can be stuck to the wrong door. A name can be dragged through corridors by someone else's hands. But a name can also be reclaimed, documented, spoken clearly, and placed back where it belongs. When the photographer asked me to smile, I did. Not because everything was fixed, because for once, the picture would not be evidence against me. Clara sent me a message that night from an unknown number. I knew it was her before I opened it. Some people have a rhythm even when hiding. You ruined my life over a folder. I stared at the screen for a long time. The old Mara would have replied with paragraphs. She would have explained the folder was not the point, the theft was not the beginning, the frame-up would have ruined me, the truth mattered, actions mattered, harm mattered. She would have tried to carve understanding into stone with bare hands. The new Mara typed one sentence. "No, Clara. You risked mine over a ranking." I sent it, then blocked the number. My hand shook afterward. Not from fear exactly. From the withdrawal of an old addiction. The need to be understood by the person who hurt me. Outside my window, the campus lights glowed over the wet paths. Somewhere below, students shouted after evening study. Life continued with insulting ease. That used to bother me. How could the world keep moving after your world collapsed? Now I found comfort in it. The world kept moving after Clara's plan collapsed too. Consequences were not apocalypse. They were weather. You prepared, endured, rebuilt. A month later, the final disciplinary outcome became official. Clara lost her scholarship eligibility for the year, received a formal misconduct record, and was required to complete the term remotely before transferring schools. The administration also changed locker protocols, staff corridor access, and confidential folder handling. Labels were no longer handwritten or student-managed. Staff storage received digital logs. Students joked that Mara Lin caused a security reform. I accepted the joke because it was easier than explaining that reforms are often born from almost disasters no one wants to name. Ms. Arden asked if I would speak to the student council about academic integrity systems. I said yes, then spent 3 days writing a speech that did not sound like a revenge confession. When I stood in front of the council, I held up a blank locker label. "This looks harmless," I said. "Most weak points do." The room quieted. I talked about access, documentation, peer pressure, and the danger of treating boundary setting as selfishness. I watched younger students listen with wide eyes. I wondered if one of them was living beside her own Clara, laughing off missing notes, apologizing for discomfort, calling red flags misunderstandings because nobody had taught her that kindness without boundaries becomes a public hallway with every door unlocked. After the talk, a first-year girl approached me and whispered, "My roommate keeps using my login." I thought I was being mean for wanting to change it. I told her, "Change it tonight." Maybe that was the real ending, or the first good use of what happened. Pain becomes less useless when it turns into a warning someone else can survive. Sometimes I still dream of the old timeline. In the dream, I wake up too late. The label is gone. The folder is under my mattress. Clara is crying in the principal's office. Everyone looks at me with that terrible mixture of disappointment and relief, Relief because blaming me means the mystery is solved, and they can all go back to finals. I try to speak, but my mouth fills with paper. Locker labels, recommendation forms, printed rumors, statements I was never allowed to finish. Then I wake in the spare room above the library, heart racing, and I open the drawer. The real label is there. Mara Lynn, Locker B17. Proof does not heal everything, but it gives memory a handle. I hold it until my breathing slows. I remind myself that life happened, but it is not the only version. I do not have to keep answering old accusations in rooms that no longer exist. Clara stole the teacher's folder today, yes. But more importantly, I took my real locker label before she could steal my name again. And when she walked into the staff corridor carrying her perfect little lie, I did not chase her. I did not scream. I did not beg the universe to save me. I stood still, let the camera see her, let the record hold, let the truth arrive with quiet footsteps and locked doors behind it. That is the part no one claps for, but it is the part that saved me. I stopped performing innocence and started protecting evidence. In this life, when my roommate reached for my future, she found only the space where my fear used to be.